she believed in marriage until marriage nearly destroyed her. Everyone in the neighborhood admired Esther. She never missed church. She sang softly during worship, even when her eyes were tired. She always said, "God will fix it." What they didn't see was how quiet her house became after sunset. Daniel, her husband, was respected outside, well-dressed, polite, generous with handshakes. Inside the house, his voice changed. It grew sharp, accusatory, heavy, doors slammed, words cut deeper than fists ever could. When his anger spilled over, Esther learned to stay silent. Silence hurt less. Each night after he slept, she knelt beside the bed. "Lord," she whispered, "change him, or change me." Bruises were hidden beneath long sleeves. Pain was hidden beneath hymns. Years passed. One evening after another outburst, Esther locked herself in the bathroom. She stared at her reflection, older, thinner, hollowed out. Her Bible lay on the floor, pages bent from tears. That night, for the first time, she didn't pray. She just sat there, listening to her own breathing. Something inside her went quiet, not broken, not angry. Empty. From that day, Esther changed. She smiled more, spoke less, watched Daniel closely. He mistook her calm for surrender. It wasn't. On a stormy night weeks later, Daniel came home to a house too silent. No food on the stove, no light in the bedroom, only Esther seated at the table, her Bible closed. "I'm done waiting for miracles," she said softly. Daniel laughed until he noticed her eyes. They were peaceful. And that frightened him more than shouting ever could. Because darkness doesn't always scream. Sometimes it kneels. And then it stands. What's your say in this situation? Daniel noticed the change, but too late. Esther no longer flinched when he raised his voice. She no longer rushed to explain herself or apologize for things she didn't do. When he shouted, she listened. When he insulted her faith, she nodded. Her calm unsettled him more than tears ever had. The house itself seemed different. Meals were cooked on time, yet tasted flat. Hymns no longer floated from the kitchen. Her Bible stayed closed, untouched, gathering dust like something that had outlived its purpose. At night, Esther slept facing the wall, eyes open, counting his breaths instead of praying. Daniel mistook her silence for defeat, but silence, when it lasts too long, becomes a plan. One evening, during a power outage, rain pounding the roof like fists, Daniel lost his temper again. The walls heard it, the floor felt it. Esther stood there, still as stone. When he finished, expecting tears, she simply asked one question. "Do you remember the first time you promised to love me?" Her voice was steady, almost kind. Daniel scoffed and walked away. That was the moment Esther understood something terrifying and clear. He would never change. Not with prayer, not with patience, not with pain. The realization didn't break her. It freed her. From that night on, Esther began preparing, not with anger, not with haste, with precision. She started writing dates in a small notebook. She memorized his routines. She smiled in public. She spoke scripture at church. At home, she watched, because darkness doesn't always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it grows quietly, in kitchens, in bedrooms, in women who have begged God long enough and finally decide to answer themselves. And when the storm returned to that house again, Esther was no longer waiting for it to pass. The rain stopped at exactly 2:14 a.m. Esther noticed because silence rushed in too fast, like something holding its breath. Daniel was asleep, heavy, careless sleep. The kind that comes from believing tomorrow will look exactly like yesterday. Esther lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Every creak sounded familiar. Every shadow knew her name. She slipped out of bed quietly. No prayers, no tears, just resolve. In the kitchen, she stood for a long moment, hand resting on the table where she had once begged God for answers. The closed Bible was still there. She didn't open it. She already knew the verse she needed. Wisdom cries aloud in the streets. Tonight, wisdom was telling her to leave. Esther moved through the house like a ghost. Documents gathered, a small bag packed, phone on silent. At the door, she hesitated. Not from fear, from memory. Years of promises, apologies, and hope pressed against her chest. Then Daniel shifted in the bedroom and muttered her name. Something inside her hardened. Not cruel, just finished. She stepped outside. The air was cold, clean, honest. Behind her, the house stood quiet, holding all the secrets it had swallowed. For the first time, Esther did not feel responsible for what would happen next. Some storms are not meant to be endured. Some cages are not meant to be prayed into becoming homes. When morning came, Daniel woke to a house that no longer answered him. No breakfast, no hymns, no Esther, only the echo of his own voice, and the realization that silence, once ignored, can walk away forever. And somewhere down the road, as the sun rose, Esther breathed freely. Not because the darkness had won, but because it hadn't. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe.